I did not know I wanted to be a biotech recruiter growing up, but I have found, quite a love for it and a passion for it. And then conversely, in doing the work, you can really have a meaningful impact. Get some insight from both sides of that experience, right? What they go to school for. All right, now I have my degree. What do I do now? We get a lot of people who come from all backgrounds in machine learning. So people who are working in business and helping to understand the market, what their customer trends are like, to help make informed business decisions. Many of them have different methodologies in terms of how they detect cancer, but there are quite a few commonalities that can make for an easier transition.
Good morning. So today I have a new guest with us, Justin, who has been in the technical recruiting space for quite a while. He used to work for education, but now he has worked exclusively on recruitment. Let's welcome Justin on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom, where he will tell us about his experience, how it was like transitioning from education to specifically recruitment, and what he has learned along the way. Hi, Justin. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you so much. So, Justin, can you tell us about your experience transitioning from specifically education into recruitment specifically?
Oh yeah, it's been quite a journey, and it had a lot of challenges, kind of technically from performing work to even physical. So I actually was doing recruitment work for a life science institution in Philadelphia, actually, which I'm natively from, and then decided to make the transition and got an opportunity doing recruitment for a biotech company in San Diego. So I actually had to physically move there for that role. This is all pre-pandemic time, so very much emphasis on in-person work. I actually put in 3 days notice at my last job at the time. I don't recommend that, but put in 3 days notice, packed up my life in 4 days, drove out for another 4, and went to work the next day. So it was quite a challenge from that standpoint. But I think the transition from a skill set standpoint was actually fairly smooth. There's a lot of commonality between admissions work and higher education and recruiting for industry. And the fact that I went from a science background personally to doing science recruitment to working at a science organization made it that much smoother of a transition for me.
Okay. I think I'm interested to hear because I think there's a lot of transitions where people are now studying something else and they jump into something else completely. But you went from a similar background into something that you're currently recruiting for.
Right.
So can you maybe explain some of the pros and cons of going from a similar field into a job of that similar field, as opposed to coming from a non-traditional background into doing something that's completely different?
Yeah, I think the pros are pretty quick to fire off in that, the transition becomes easier. And because a lot of the roles that you recruit for, you have a general understanding of, whether that be for students you admitted, and having an understanding of what their professional backgrounds were. So I primarily did graduate recruitment, so masters and PhDs, and our program really catered towards working adults. And so had a lot of familiarity with what they were already doing and where they wanted to see themselves go. And so I kind of benefited from, when I made my transition into industry, I was then working at a place that they would eventually end up after their education. And so I kind of uniquely had an opportunity to be able to get some insight from both sides of that experience, right? What they go to school for. All right, now I have my degree. What do I do now? And so I was seeing the exact same people that I admitted for their graduate degree, which for many people they consider to be their rest of life degree. And then personally, I have an undergraduate degree in microbiology. And so there's that much greater reinforcement for me to make that kind of transition. I would say some of the cons is, you necessarily don't get a chance to see new things. And that's why a lot of people make that transition, right? And so, if you are very comfortable in that space, it can work out quite well for you. But for some people who just really say, I don't want to do this anymore, it may represent an easier transition, but ultimately maybe not a satisfactory one long term.
Okay, no, thank you so much for being elaborative. I can definitely see the transition being easier, but I think some of the cons might be when you come from a traditional background and go into something familiar. I think you don't look at things from a different perspective. Coming from a non-traditional background and looking at it from different perspectives always help. But thank you so much for sharing that, Justin. So my next question, Justin, would be: you mentioned that you have currently 20 open positions, out of which 8 are under you. Can you maybe elaborate a little more on the positions that are open?
Sure. So as a cancer diagnostics company, we have a wide variety of things, and we're very much a startup. So right now we're around 160 or so employees. So looking at the grand total, it's a lot of them are brand new to the company. where we are identifying our needs as we're continuing to grow and preparing for like our market rollout. And so a lot of them are, some of them are higher level. So we have quite a few directors, associate director positions who will really help provide that leadership, whether that be a commercial launch, marketing, clinical direction, so some of our clinical facilities. And then we have other roles which are more in the individual contributor level, but are still very much important for a startup at our size and also first time. And these really kind of fall under my purview. It's a lot of data science and software engineering roles, and that they're focused on developing things that we don't have. So it's a lot of custom in-house solutions. It's a lot of machine learning applications, and it's a lot of quality assurance for kind of regulatory compliance, because us being a life scientist company, we have to comply with a lot of both domestic and international policy when we do expand to foreign markets.
Okay, no, thank you for sharing that. A follow-up question for that would be, so because data scientists are under you and everything, what are some of the current ongoing projects that they would work on when they come in, so that if people are looking for jobs, they know when they do apply for your specific company, they know what they're getting themselves into, they know the projects that they would work on?
Yeah, that's a great question. We actually have a few different data scientist subgroups, I'll kind of call them for this conversation. We have ones that are really more so focused on research, so things that will potentially help us long term, identifying, and refining machine learning algorithms, helping to identify new cancer targets. And so they're doing a lot of that investigatory kind of discovery work. And then we have those who are focused on what we call our assay development. And so they are going to be working with some of our clinicians who are not just developing, but refining our cancer test. And the data that's generated from that's a lot of genetic data effectively. And so they're going to be working with a variety of stakeholders, from the lab to software, to really help make meaning of that data. And so there's a lot of streamline, a lot of pipeline work that needs to be done. And so those are some of the different skill sets that, if you can imagine, that kind of go along with that. So for some of the research roles, people who have a lot of curiosity, who are frequently trying new methods, whether that be from a different industry or just have a lot of curiosity about machine learning. And then for those in assay development and pipeline development, perhaps those who are more familiar with that type of work. That being said, we get a lot of people who come from all backgrounds in machine learning. So people who are working in business and helping to understand the market, what their customer trends are like, to help make informed business decisions. People from the oil and gas industry, these are all really fantastic people to speak to and have a lot of skills that are really valued, even in our kind of focus space. So yeah, I think that's really kind of a lot of the skills that we're looking for.
Okay, no, thank you for sharing that. Now, my next question would be, a lot of companies, Justin, have usually a specific type of companies that they usually want candidates from. What kind of industries do you think would easily adjust to when they come into your company? Of course, healthcare and pharma would be one of them, but just understanding your perspective on that, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, healthcare, pharma are really easy go-tos. They have the easier transition, if you will. Other biotechs, cancer diagnostic companies, there are quite a few in the space. Many of them have different methodologies in terms of how they detect cancer, but there are quite a few commonalities that can make for an easier transition. That being said, people who have familiarity with other well-regulated environments, the automotive space, for example, aerospace, they have a lot of compliance that they have to adhere to, various industry standards, manufacturing practice standards, documentation standards. And so these are people, if they have a lot of familiarity with that regulatory landscape to some extent, whether they be firmly someone rooted in doing regulatory work, or if the work that they do, they have to be mindful of that kind of compliance across the board. Again, whether that be software, laboratory work, machine learning focused things, marketing, these are people who can make a good transition to this industry as well.
No, that makes sense. I think, as in, like, when you think of pharma and everything, there's so much compliance that one has to do. There's so many regulations. So it's important. It would be easier of a transition, because I think those people come from such levels of regulation, so they can understand how it would be like working for a similar company. So thank you for sharing that. Last question, Justin. This is more of a philosophical question, so would love to understand your perspective on it, which would be, do you think work can be a gift?
Do I think work can be a gift?
Yes.
I think so. This is quite a curveball question. I think work can be a gift. It can be a gift for the person doing the job. Some people love to work. Some people can find a personal calling in the work that they do, whether they know what they're going into or if they happen to stumble upon it. I did not know I wanted to be a biotech recruiter growing up, but I have found quite a love for it and a passion for it. And then conversely, in doing the work, you can really have a meaningful impact. And I think from being in the cancer diagnostics field for a number of years, one of the commonalities when you talk to people in the industry is that people really do feel like they have a meaningful impact in healthcare, in the future of healthcare. And I think that can really serve to ground a lot of people and serve as a good answer to that question.
That was beautiful. I like the aspect that you mentioned that work can be a calling for many people and how you decided that, oh, this is something that you enjoy doing. So thank you so much for sharing that. Justin, our time is up. It was a pleasure speaking with you and learning about your experiences, how you got into recruitment, what you've learned along the way, and how you're making a difference in so many people's lives who are suffering with cancer. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.